Evan Dobelle, thank you. Well, welcome to Greater Boston, and thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Peter.
You're in some hot water, or reading the papers would certainly suggest that. Can you briefly describe what the nature of the controversy about your tenure, your expenses, and Westfield State is?
You know, Peter, I wish I could, but, you know, I'm sort of hurt and disappointed about the whole thing because I'm not sure I quite understand it. I've been president now for almost 6 years. We've taken Westfield State, which is now on 175th anniversary, the Great Horace Mann Institution, first one in America to take women, to take students of color, to take poor kids. And we've kept that legacy and have been hugely ranked by U.S. News and World Report, by Mass Inc. as one of the great state universities in America. This situation to me is quite honestly confusing, and I'm not quite sure what the genesis of it is, and I'm not quite sure why it's continually being pushed in the media.
Well, there are several nubs, if nubs can be plural here. There's been a auditor's report, a look at your expenses and spending for the school. And in a nutshell, it sounds as if there are questions about whether the university receives value for the amount of money spent on trips overseas. There have also been questions raised about a fundraising trip you took to San Francisco to lobby foundations there. Do you see something else at work here?
Well, there may be something else because those kinds of things are out in the media, and you have every right to repeat it, but they weren't written correctly. There's never been an auditor's report. There was an accounting firm that did a review of travel policy, and it was subjective and was criticized by our own legal counsel as unprofessional. The situation about travel abroad and what a lot of corporate people will say, return on investment, ROI. I've taken one trip 5.5 years ago, a short trip, 10 days to Asia with 10 colleagues, the president of our foundation. No tax dollars were involved. It was monies given to the foundation to be able to do interesting things outside of scholarships. With the president of the foundation, with the student trustee on the foundation, 3 faculty members, 3 international consultants. It was an opportunity to see Tom Friedman's flat world and to be able to start enthusiasm among the faculty for what they said was their #1 priority, globalization. At the same time, I sent 8 faculty members to Doha, Qatar, which I didn't accompany them on, and I haven't been out of the country since, except for short excursions with my baseball team to Cuba, which was privately paid for, and a basketball tournament. So for me, it has to be something else, because the reality is I self-reported a mistake that I unintentionally made several years ago. And that mistake was to assume the practice that I inherited was policy. And it turned out to not be the case. My administrative vice president came in and said, look, I know you travel, and when you go to a hotel, you buy a Coca-Cola, you have a drink, you have some friends in that city or this city, and you buy them dinner, and then you come back and you redact it and you reimburse. But that's not the policy, so stop doing it. And I said, well, I have to do more than that. And you know, you grow up learning to tell the truth. And I self-reported it to the chairman of my board, self-reported to our legal counsel. Legal counsel came in, reviewed the documents, said there were no violations of the law. I still was concerned about it. Said, do I need to lose sleep over it? And he said, no. He said, just don't do it again. And I haven't done it again, but now, years later, anonymous documents come up, and the chairman of my board and the executive committee, with many violations of the open meeting law, and totally aside from the other 8 members of the board, went on this investigation that at the end of hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent, have come up with what? They've come up with the fact that I self-reported something years ago.
Well, let's get back to that in a moment.
Sure.
This afternoon, Governor Deval Patrick said that he thought you weren't taking the situation seriously enough. Those are, those aren't damning words coming from the governor, but that's relatively strong language. I mean, that's definitely a shot across your bow.
Well, if I were a governor and having misinformation from my staff, I'd probably be upset with my staff. I know the governor said that in Pittsfield, where he lives, as you know, in a second home right next door in Richmond, and he said it at a forum, and he was on his way to New York and then Canada. And I look.
So, are you suggesting this was a sort of off-the-cuff comment? Or?
I do. I've known the governor for a long time. I have great deference to him. He certainly, when he began his life, he had very complicated charges against him, and he was given due process by the press and by others. And I've only asked for due process. But the reality is, we're going to be on television this evening, and by now, the Commissioner of Higher Education, as we said we would, will have received a 20-page document with reference to thousands of documents that explain in great detail every single thing that has been suggested that needed answers, and they are there clearly in black and white. I take it very seriously.
If the governor's watching, I'm sure he'll note that. Listen, I was talking to someone up at the State House earlier today, and he suggested to me that the root of all this is a dispute between the chairman of the board of trustees, who was an official in the state police, and yourself, because you've been trying to crack down on standards for Massachusetts state police officers who are studying at Westfield. Do you?
Well, that could be a developing story, but I don't think that's the heart of the story. It may well be for the chairman. It's not certainly for me, and I'd be hugely disappointed and regretful that any of that might be true. I would hope that isn't the case. It's conceivable, I guess. We've had a number of state police being chairman over the last several years as members of our board, chairman of the board, finance chairman, vice chairman. It seems somewhat unusual. I hope there's nothing wrong. The dispute seems to be an odd one, because when I've been evaluated over the last 3 years by the present chairman of the board for a pay increase as late as December of 2012, he said it was all about my fiscal management, my vision, and my experience, why he would recommend a pay increase. The former chairmen of the board all elevated my tenure to an extraordinary heights, almost an embarrassingly high one, because it's always a team effort with your faculty and your staff. So I don't get it. I don't get it, because it may well be a dispute between higher administration officials and public state universities. As you know, the administration in many ways has started a little bit more of an intrusive takeover of the University of Massachusetts and the community colleges, but the 9 state universities still remain independent, entrepreneurial, and of high quality, and that may well have something to do with it, too.
Yeah, it certainly could. I mean, Robert Wood, many years ago, president of the University of Massachusetts, certainly crossed swords with Governor Dukakis over policy. But I have to say, in looking at the record here, what strikes me as a sort of odd situation is the trip you took to San Francisco, where if the Globe report is any indication, your trip to San Francisco was billed to your trustees as a major effort to tap into big foundations out there, where you were once a college president.
I was,
and the Globe reports that the visit there was much more perfunctory, that there was no face-to-face lobbying to raise money.
Well, that's just not entirely accurate, and I wish the reporters had talked to me, which they have not. That trip was about 2 things. It was about, one, after 4 years of finally being able to get an appointment with the Apple Corporation, which is everything in the Silicon Valley. In many ways, it's everything in America in technology. And that meeting was arranged. It was also to participate in what we call a J term, January and June, where we take students with faculty and administrators on credit earning, 3 hours of credit, trips around the world, to Ghana, to Dublin, to Vietnam, to China. 500 students have gone now with 60 different faculty members. And I was participating in the J term. So the trip was to participate in this J term with the students. And I took them into the Silicon Valley. I took them to Monterey. I took them through Salinas, talked about Cesar Chavez, talked about agriculture, talked about Monterey and John Steinbeck, took them up to Stanford. Now, the point is that was
why you, by the way, I asked this with no suggestion. It shouldn't be you. But why would the president of the university take the students? Why not faculty members?
Well, I'm a faculty member. I'm a tenured faculty member in political science, and the students have said to me over the years how much they love my participating. And so
the feedback I've gotten, by the way, is that you're extremely popular with the students.
Well, I'm grateful for that.
But is that the best use of your time, do you think?
Well, it was on a Sunday and on Monday, which was Memorial Day holiday. It was a Sunday and a Monday. And then I arrived on Thursday night. On Friday, I visited 2 foundations, one of which has given us $40,000 over the last several years. Saturday was a down day.
And what foundation was that?
The Gensler Foundation.
Okay. And they gave you money for what?
They give me money for scholarships.
Okay.
For young people. They're thrilled to be able to make a difference. You know, 91% of our students are on financial aid. 94% are from Massachusetts. And we're still one of the lowest cost, private quality, public value institutions in America. But I went out on a Thursday night. Friday saw 2 foundations. Saturday was a down day. Sunday and Monday, holidays. I worked with the students from early morning till evening, taking them to Berkeley, taking them up to the Sonoma Valley. And then on Wednesday, I had these meetings with Apple, which were for a long period of time, and also to speak to several of Steve Jobs' gurus. And Steve I knew, and he and I were both on the board of the Gap Corporation in San Francisco. So Tuesday, I guess you could sit by a pool and have a drink, but instead I asked for a foundation employee to accompany me and to be able to go around foundations. Well, her approval wasn't given to take the trip until late. She tried her very best to get appointments with foundations. And what we did is we had tailor-made foundation documents and packets made up. And I literally drove for 6.5 hours from Menlo Park to Palo Alto to downtown San Francisco to every conceivable foundation that I thought I had a relationship with on a personal level with a trustee, and gave them to them. And when we got back, a document which was leaked for obviously malicious purposes, not by the person who went with me, that basically suggested over the next 4 to 6 months, this is the potential that we could possibly get from these foundations, and this is what they're looking for and what they're interested in. That was all it was. Okay. Now, I don't understand. I would have flown, as any college president would have flown. I don't care if you're the president of Harvard or MIT or Westfield State. If the Apple Corporation was going to, I'll give you an opportunity, I would have flown out to San Francisco for that alone.
Okay, point taken. This situation, however, appears to be, if not spiraling out of control, certainly spiraling in an unpleasant direction, both institutionally and for you. The trustees will be meeting later this month. What are you prepared to do here? You've obviously answered the various allegations and addressed points of controversy. But would you be willing to resign if you thought this was hurting the institution? At what point does the good you've done been compromised by this controversy?
You know, it would be like asking Governor Patrick after the first 3 weeks of his governorship if he was prepared to resign. It doesn't make any sense. So this is a situation that has spiraled up out of control in many ways. My interest in the future is to continue what I've always done in public life. I always tell the truth, I'm always transparent, and I'm always prepared to answer questions. Beyond that, I look to stay at Westfield State in our 175th anniversary. Look forward to homecoming next weekend, and to continue to make a difference for my faculty and my students, who I'd like to think, if I have any legacy with them right now, it's raising the aspirations of the institution.
Let me ask you just one last question.
Sure.
And then we have to wrap up. Just very briefly, is there anything you would have done differently? Sitting here today, you know, would you handle any of your response differently, or would you handle anything you would have done differently?
Well, always in retrospect or in hindsight, you would have. Would I have asked if the policies that I was introduced to initially, the practices were the policy? Sure, you can go back and do that, but there was no intent. There's not a penny missing. Every dollar is accounted for. So for me, I always look ahead. To look behind in a rearview mirror when you have a big windshield in front of you, you know, anybody can go back and look at that. But I have been told by my legal counsel at the university that I violated no laws, and it just seems to me there are different agendas now, 3 years later, that are trying to bring something else that I self-reported for a different kind of agenda. And what that agenda is very interesting to me. You mentioned two possibilities.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate it.